Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, today we are going to look at very early thoughts on LaTeX. So let's go ahead and chat about this really briefly. So I mentioned at the end of last year / beginning of this year that I'm going to be looking at learning a few things. I want to look at the updates to Krita. I want to look at I forget what the other things are. I'll have to go look at the video. But one of them is learning LaTeX, because as I was doing some work on producing some of the books, people are saying, oh, well, look into LaTeX. So I wanted to examine that in some detail this year. Now, understand a couple things. First, this channel is, what makes Switch to Linux different from nearly every other Linux channel out there is my chief task is to show you how to do real world things on Linux, not to just show you what we can do on our computer. Because when it comes down to the real worldness of everything, it comes down to, can we ship a product that someone wants to buy? Now, building websites, writing and producing books, all these types of things are the stuff that we're talking about. And when I first started looking into this, let me first go into it and talk about pronunciation very briefly. So there was when I had done my initial video after just reading a few things, I was pronouncing it LaTeX, which even the developer's like, hey, I'm not opposed to that. So there's some good questions about what is the proper way of pronouncing this. So directly from Donald Knuth, who wrote in his book on it, textbook or tech book, he talks about the etymology coming from the Greek tech, which comes from art, which would be pronounced tech specifically. So the first part is either LaTeX or LaTeX, but since he does say that language is not always logical, LaTeX is also possible. So either one's good. I'm going to go with LaTeX, and the case for this, just because that seems to be, from all the different videos I've watched and tutorials, that seems to be the case most all. So I'm looking at the information, and a document preparation markup is what LaTeX is designed for. And as I started looking at this and examples and all the different things, my thought is this does definitely seem a whole lot more geared towards scientific preparations, article preparations for like peer-reviewed journals or things like that, and less is what we would use for publishing a popular book, or by popular book I mean a book for the general population, not a scientific endeavor. And looking into all of this, I'm kind of still leaning in that direction. I have a challenge for myself, and that will kind of be the concluding video. What is this worth it? Is it not worth it? So first, qualifications on the matters. My task, again, is to take my books, which I write and produce entirely on Linux. I do the cover design on this is done entirely in GIMP. The interior design is entirely in LibreOffice, with the ebook production split through Calibri and through Sigil. However, in the future, it's going to be just Sigil for a reason I will explain later. But then as I'm starting to produce my various books, and people are like, well, use LaTeX, use LaTeX. I'm looking everything over, I'm going, LaTeX seems to be very useful if you're doing scientific literature, not books for the popular world to see. Now, I'm not a noob in this area. I actually am a doctor, and this is my dissertation. All right, big old massive nasty. If you'd like to go to sleep, just look for something with a title like that. Okay, that's the title. If you're curious, that title is The Regulation of Peroxisome Proliferator Activated Receptor Mediated Transcription by LXXLL Motif Containing Coactivators and the FOXO Subclass of Forkhead Box Proteins. That is what I spent 6 years of my life developing, this dissertation. All right, so as you go through and you look at how a dissertation is formatted. Now, at the time, this is from Penn State, they did not require us to use LaTeX. They required us to use Microsoft Office specifically, and to write your dissertation, you had to use a macro pack, which was horrible because it killed the spell check, and there are some spelling errors that I did not catch. But we have things like, here's how tables are implemented inside of this. All right, this is my early training in Photoshop. I had to create all these silly tables. Ooh, wait, this is one of my best tables. Ooh, look at that table. Yeah. how xenobiotics mediate the transcription of regulations. Oh yeah, that's good stuff. Oh, and here's all my LXXLL motifs. If you're a science geek, you'll understand what I'm talking about. If you're not, my apologies. If you're looking for something to go to bed with, ooh, here's our ligands for PPR. Ooh, beautiful. All right, so as you're formatting a dissertation, you need to use a completely different formatting class. You'll have, okay, so here's an example of, well, let me do one page more. Because over here, we'll have an example with references, Greek letters, just how this formatting is output. All of that is by the natural way that LaTeX works, automatically formats things out. Now, when you are doing a book for the regular population, it's not boring, it's not dry, it's not scientific, it's not academic. So this is what I did on LibreOffice. You can kind of see my chapter summaries there. I have beautiful little bullet points. I have my drop caps. I have just a lot of things to make the book look attractive. I'm using a variety of fonts there, fonts for indicating different quotes. And then, of course, I have call-out boxes on the side. You'll see those to break up the text a little bit, makes the book a little easier to spot. Of course, I have headers. The one header over here is the chapter. The header over here is the book title. So these are the different considerations. There's a lot of different things you have to consider. How do you format and input your table of contents? How do you format and input an index? These are all things that we need to ask. And so the task is actually to take this book and reformat it from the original manuscript into a book for print production using LaTeX. So that happens to be the challenge. So how do you accomplish that? Well, installing LaTeX on your distribution can be a little bit of a bear depending on what you're doing. So what I wanted to do is they do tell you here, if you're new to LaTeX or you want an easy installation, get a full tech distribution. So they have a list of notable distributions. So I flipped through this and I found Knoppix. This, if you are an old school Linux guy, you'll remember LaTeX as one of the first live key CDs, if not the first. And so with that as an availability, I decided that we're going to use Knoppix as my test scenario. So with that, what I wanted to do is, rather than having to work with a variety of different things without trying to add it on top of my main system, instead what I wanted to do is run this as a distribution so that I can play with it in a virtualized or non-destructive issue. If I had problems or I said, well, it kind of sucks, then nothing lost, no skin off my back. So with that being said, what we're going to do is let's jump on over to Knoppix and we'll have a look at what the current progress is, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's go ahead and jump on over to our desktop view as we are booting up Knoppix. So this, of course, you can use as a live distribution, or in my case, what I'm doing is I'm using it as I've installed it onto a virtual machine here. And oh Lord, I was doing some experimenting the other day, and I found myself in GNOME. So let me get out of here, and I'm gonna pause out some video. I'm gonna come back when I'm back to a better desktop environment. All right, here we are. Going back to LXDE. So this is actually the environment that I'm using to do my test. This is, of course, my manuscript here. I forget that everything is single click on this, not double click. So I might have opened that twice. Yes, I did. All right. So what we have here is, this is actually my manuscript. If it starts jumping around on me. So here's actually the manuscript. So this is actually the formatted manuscript. I think I'm kind of using this as a test just to see how things are looking. But I want to run the unformatted, and I'm pretty sure I have an unformatted copy of it as well. If not, I think maybe I'm just pasting stuff in. I forget how I'm doing my system. But this is basically my early environment. This is the what I currently have as far as the setup. So if we look at these, and let me also pull up if I can. Thought I actually had a copy of the actual PDF. All right, I don't have a copy of the actual PDF, so let's go ahead and boot the LibreOffice back up. So this is actually the PDF output, which is generated using LaTeX, and this is actually over here, the actual formatted document. So let me get rid of this guy over here. All right, so on our right, we have the formatted document, which is actually the one sent to the printer to print the book. And on the left, we have the output as defined by the by LaTeX. So let me go ahead and see if I can set them both to about the same page size. All right, so here we have some. This is all just an image, so it's going to look effectively identical. And then here we have the copyright information. See that this one here did put the links in there. The links are not in there on the actual one sent to the publisher, but you can see it's pretty much right now the same. Now I only put 2 chapters in here right now. So the test here is, does it have to be identical? I've kind of said, no, I don't have to make it 100% identical. While that would be a really neat test, there's just some things that I don't necessarily need that. So how my layout is over here, I do like the way LaTeX is printing this out for now, right now. That might change down the road. Versus this over here, but this indenting how it is actually was intentionally set up this way. If you actually were to look at my latest book, I Am Not Amused, you'll see that everything is aligned just like the table of contents in LaTeX. So that has to do with, now, if I wanted to do something in LaTeX like I've done here in LibreOffice, that would be a royal pain to do because I would have to utilize different types of headers to accomplish it. And yeah, somebody's going to say, well, just use this a subheader instead of, or a subheader. Well, there's problems with doing that from a formatting standpoint when you are writing an actual book. That's what the problem is. Whereas here in LibreOffice, I can just kind of define that the way that I want, any way I want to. All right, so here's my dedication, of course. I skipped the dedication in LaTeX. I skipped the acknowledgments. Let's jump on down to these. All right. All right. Now, you'll see here that I do not have a drop cap on the introduction on LaTeX. That's simply because I was doing a test with it. That's perfectly fine. Not concerned with that. It did take me a ton of time. As far as learning curve, LaTeX sucks. If you're just going to be doing a book every now and again, don't learn LaTeX. It's going to be a waste of your time. Go into LibreOffice. It's very easy to learn. I learned how to format books to send to the printer in 1 week's time on LibreOffice. I have almost a month's time into LaTeX, and I still have so many questions. I have no idea what to do with it. All right, but again, that's not to say LaTeX is going to suck. It just means that there's some differences, and we need to question: is it worth doing it in LaTeX? Is it worth learning LaTeX, or is it not? All right, so here I have my basic introduction. You'll notice one thing is that I have the page number on the introduction. It is missing from LibreOffice, and frankly, that was intentional as well. Over here, we have a page number. Over here, we have a page number. All right. So that's perfectly okay. I intentionally was trying to get it on this page, but I have removed it from the actual chapter pages. In reality, my introduction here is not a chapter heading versus in Libre it is. So everything there is okay. Obviously, there is a slight difference in the layout of the text. I didn't necessarily want to get that 100% exactly perfect, no matter what, especially since there was actually an error in the spacing of the footers on LibreOffice that I did not notice until it went to print. And in fact, if I were to grab one of these guys and hold it up to the light and go back over to my main screen here like this, not sure if the camera will pick this up, but if I hold this guy up, it's probably not going to work. I would have to, okay, you know what? It will work if I shine a light from behind. Grab my flashlight. So if I were to shine a light back here, it's not going to pull. It's not going to show me. Oh, bummer. All right. Well, what you would be able to see, oh, there it is. There, you can barely see it right there. The numbers do not line up. Oh, ouch. That's a minor formatting thing. I don't think anyone would ever notice if I didn't point it out. Now that I have pointed out, if you have a copy of the book, it's going to drive you crazy for the rest of your life. My apologies. That's solved in LaTeX. That's not solved in LibreOffice. It's solved in the latest books. You know, any books after this, that got fixed in. All right. So this, of course, is a blank page between a chapter, which is exactly what you want. If you are unfamiliar with general book formatting, you typically want the chapter to be on the right side of the, on all right pages start chapters, meaning there's times you're going to have a blank page on the left. So getting that blank page in LaTeX, very easy, no problem. All right, so here we formatted this as 1 with this. Now, I am going to go back and make LaTeX look like this. I haven't done it yet because getting this to just say 1 instead of chapter 1 was such a royal pain. That was one entire day itself, getting that to work consistently. I'm going to save that code in a separate location, so if I ever need to do that again, I have it, and then I'm going to go ahead and work out the code to turn it into my chapter 1, spelling it out like I do it over here. Now, for LibreOffice, I do not like how close the double underline is. I'm guessing that on LaTeX, I will be able to space out that double lining a little bit more spaced out, and that's exactly what I want. All right, so here we have our chapters and our verse text there, just fine. I can actually increase this, decrease this, whatever, if I want to do that. Now, drop caps. On LaTeX, this is both very easy and very not so much so. What you will notice is that the drop cap, we have the indented text does not line up, and there does not appear to be a way to make it line up. If you put in an extra space, the H would be way shifted to the right of the V. If I take out the space, the H is shifted way to the left of the V. I do not have a way in LaTeX to line those up. But here on LibreOffice, it lines everything perfectly, no matter what. All right. Page numbers, of course, are the same. That's good. Now, of course, you'll see in LibreOffice that this is in a dark gray. That just means it's a formatted block. That does not actually print that way. So if I were to pull up the actual book here, and you can see that. If I were to actually show you a camera, of course. There we are. You'll see that it does not print with those, but my spacing and indenting is perfect on LibreOffice. It is not perfect on LaTeX, and I do not see a way to make it perfect on LaTeX. If you happen to know how to fix that, please let me know. I'd be interested. All right, so here we have our chapter titles. Now, one of the things that you will notice in book formatting, if you are super OCD, is you will notice that this is slightly off from this, and this is slightly off from this. No, that's not an OCD thing. That is very intentional. In a book, the inner margin, you'd call it the gutter margin, which on a right page is the left, and on the left page is a right. There is extra margin on that to account for book binding, so that when it's bound and opened up, the margins do line up on the actual printed book. So that in LaTeX is very easy to set up. It's also very easy to set up in LibreOffice. Now, the thing that is not as easy to set up, but you can see I have it fixed, is that in LibreOffice, I wanted to pull my, I wanted to hang my chapter titles and my book titles out over the text. That is very easy to do in LibreOffice. I pulled it off in LaTeX, but it's a lot harder to pull off. Doable, but harder to pull off. So you can see here, we're hanging out on this end. Now, I don't think my numbers are there. Now, here is one of the major problems. Wait, I'm sorry. I'm not getting to that major problem yet. All right, this guy here, I want to see it's on page 10. I don't remember that guy bleeding over like that in the original. Okay, so over here, this is just a matter of something's not set up right. That's actually is supposed to be one line like it is in LaTeX. Not sure why it's displaying that way. It might be a matter of the font may not be fully installed or something else. Not all that concerned about that, but you can see everything here is looking good. All right, here's a block quote that we have. Okay, this is one of the issues. I have not been able to get these scripture block quotes to match a different font where it doesn't mess up the font everywhere else. We're still working on that. We have not yet tried putting in my call out boxes on the side in LaTeX. That's the next thing that's to be called out, but we're working on those individual items. So as we go through on the bottom, I also have not attempted to format the bullet points yet. So that's kind of where I'm at. And then this is just a test there, just to interface. I'm making sure that the chapter 2 always appears on the correct side of the page, and it does. If I were to add some extra stuff, add an extra space in there, it would work just fine. And so that's kind of where I'm at. So as far as how to get all of this working, what I'm actually using on here is, so if I go and open up my text, I'm using TeXmaker. So this is basically just a kind of like a GUI for our documents here. So all of this is the formatting. So here is where LaTeX could very, very possibly be the absolute killer for what I'm doing. In my instance, where I am setting up a publishing company and other people are going to be using my services to format books, should LaTeX work and I take the time to build all this stuff once, this is the only thing that has to be copied and edited into a book to format anything. I want to change the fonts, set some main fonts right here. Done. Very easy. I want to adjust the spacing a little bit. Done. Right up here. Single line. Does all your book spacing. Everything else. Images. What's your basic setup? All of this kind of stuff. And then these fancy heads here, this is what's defining a variety of different settings. So in theory, once you get all of this stuff set up and done, all I have to do is just make a few minor tweaks, input the basic markup, which is fairly simple, into these, and that's it. We're off and running. So that is what makes LaTeX a potentially a major time saver if you're producing several books a year. Because for me right now, when I did my last book, and I'm getting good at formatting books on LibreOffice. Now you can start with my previous template and put it in and apply a template. There's always a few adjustments you need to do, but the reality is it takes a little bit more in between each book. If LaTeX works, it's a simple matter of dropping in the basic markup, editing the top information here, and everything will just simply output in the book. And I can take a book time from maybe about a week of production time down to less than a day of production time. So if you're producing a lot of books, this has the great potential. Now, the major downside, again, is the learning curve is massive. A massive learning curve on this thing. There is great documentation, so you can generally figure it out. But whereas on LibreOffice, I go in and I go, oh, okay, that's easy. It's pretty much a GUI, go in, find the format, and change it. On LaTeX, it's a lot of research to do every little thing. I want to push my page numbers out beyond my margin. Well, that's an hour and a half of research, and then you put it in, and you find there's some errors, and then you got to fix it and make it work. So if you are an author and you're considering, people are telling you use LaTeX for your book markup, and you're just like an author and you want to push out, a book a year or something, don't waste your time. It's way too much overhead to figure out for a book that is going to the general population. Now, if you're writing a dissertation or a scientific article, or you're writing a book for the scientific community where formatting is secondary to anything else, hey, use LaTeX. You won't have to mess around. Just define the page numbers and spew it out. No big deal. Not going to be an issue. But for creating a book that is beautifully designed, that looks very attractive for sale alongside other books, it's a pain. It really is a pain. And then I still have this worry. I get to the end, I output the file. Is there going to be something that the printer does not like. Because anything that I submit out to the distribution channel, it's got to meet the requirements. If it doesn't meet the requirements, they spit it out and say, try again. On LibreOffice, if I have an error in the requirements, it is like, in fact, the last book I did had an error in the requirements. One of the images I used was too high of resolution. It's like, yeah, we're not going to take this high of resolution. And so for that, it was one toggle. Go in, re-hit the export, change the resolution in the export, boom, worked perfectly. Book printed perfectly once I got it back from the printer. Perfectly fine. LaTeX, I'm a little worried about this. I really am. In fact, what I might actually do is just send it up on a separate secret Amazon account just to see what happens. I don't know. So those are the concerns that I have. That's it. So that's my early take. So I might do some extra LaTeX videos if you guys really want, getting into the more details of this. But in full reality, the next video you'll see on LaTeX is when I get the time to finish this book and show you the output. And I might even get a chance to test it by then. If I get a chance to test it, then that'll be an extra bonus. But just so you guys know, I am working on that initial list of things that I promised at the beginning of the year. This is where I'm going with LaTeX, and I will not be working on this any longer until I'm done with the next audiobook. And then we have a fourth book that's going through editorial right now. So it might be a while before I get to it. However, the next book has some things that LaTeX might make easier to do than LibreOffice. And so I might try and get the other audiobook out and then jump on over to this and see if this solves that book problem really fast. It might. I don't know, but it might. So that's kind of my thoughts. Let me know what you think of LaTeX. Have you used it? Do you know how to fix those cap issues in that in the drop cap? I'd really appreciate it if you could tell me how to do that. That's overall my thought. I'm still kind of going, I think this is more for scientific work and a lot less for popular books, but we'll see what happens when I get to the end of the project. So thanks for coming along, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux. Thank you for making it to the end of this Switch to Linux video. You can have a look at another video right on over here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel or to Think Life Media, which is my own personal support page. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.